There's a lighthouse on a hillside that overlooks life's sea.
Hello again, I'm Mike McDonald and I am here to try to answer a few more questions. The one before me right now is from Philippians chapter 4 verse 13. And it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Paul is talking. He's writing to the Philippians. This is perhaps one of the most quoted verses in the epistle to the Philippians. However, although it is almost always correctly quoted, it is usually incorrectly applied. The Apostle Paul, as I said, is here writing to the Philippian church, and he's thanking them for the gift that he has just received from them. He is appreciative of that very much. He needs the finances. However, he wanted them to know in this epistle, he wanted them to know that the true cause of his rejoicing was not his desire for more money. He had learned to be content in all conditions of life. So he writes verse 13. But he did not intend this verse to be used without limitations. He puts limitations on it. He was not referring to doing something in the sense of learning a particular profession or competing in an athletic event. Example, you've probably heard this used this way. Someone might say, if I want to become an accomplished musician or a medical doctor, I can do it because I'm a believer and because I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Well, no. It's true that Christ does give motivation and discipline so a person might achieve unusual attainments, but this is not what Paul is referring to in this context. He was writing of adjusting his circumstances of life to, or adjusting himself to his circumstances of life. He had learned to be content in all of those circumstances. It was not Paul's effort that gave him this ability. It was through Christ. It was Christ who was strengthening him to do that. Christ enabled him to be content in all circumstances. Verse 11. Contentment is not determined by what a person has or does, but by his or her relationship to Jesus Christ. This only has to do with believers. This only has to do with believers in fellowship. And only has to do with believers in fellowship who are aware of this principle. If you are a believer, that means a person who believes that Jesus is the Christ. And if you are in the will of God, doing what God has called you to do, you will be able to succeed at that regardless of the adverse circumstances you encounter. Regardless. Reference, John 15, verses 4 and 5. Jesus was speaking to his disciples. These were believers. He had spoken of something that could happen to them soon. That was in chapter 14, verse 26. Then, in an analogy, he compared himself and them to a vine and the branches of a vine. If they abide in him, they will bear fruit. If not, there will be no fruit. If they abide in him, there will be fruit. If they don't abide in him, there will not be fruit. It does not say they will not be saved. It does not say they are no longer branches. It says they will not produce fruit from the vine. Paul, a believer, was in fellowship with the Lord, doing what God had called him to do, and at the time he was a prisoner. Now, depending on who you read, he was either in a Roman prison chained to a Roman soldier, or he was under house arrest in a house in Rome chained to a Roman soldier. Either way, he was a prisoner. And he's saying this, I can do all things. Christ had enabled him to be content under these circumstances. Doesn't mean he enjoyed the circumstances. Doesn't mean he would like to change the circumstances. It does mean that he recognizes who he is, who his Lord is, what his job is, and that he can do it. Thank you very much.
There's a lighthouse on a hillside that overlooks life's sea. And when I am tossed about, it sends out a light